Next presentation is a presentation regarding amending the city ordinance to permit backyard chickens.
So we've had a request from George Stoy asking the city commission to consider amending our ordinances to allow backyard chickens. And because this is a new subject for the city commission, she has a presentation that she'd like to show you. And Georgia, we're ready.
Hi, my name is Georgia Stoy. I'm 12 years old and I'm in 7th grade at Norrup. I love animals and I have a thriving pet sitting business. In fact, just this past Saturday, I pet sat for a couple of my favorite cats. I also volunteer regularly to help animals, and a couple years ago, I went to an animal rehabilitation center in Costa Rica. But I also volunteer at New Beginnings and conducted a successful cat supplies drive last year for them. I'm a responsible pet owner myself. I'm here to convince you that chickens should be allowed in Huntington Woods as pets. Why do I believe chickens make great pets? They have unique personalities. They are funny and all a little different. They come when they are called and can even learn tricks, including playing the piano and riding a bike. You can cuddle and hug them, and they are friendly and like to be held. You can play with them like dogs or cats. They are good for your garden. They will eat bugs and other pests and keep your garden free of weeds, and eggshells are a great fertilizer. As far as pets go, they are easy to maintain, and coops only need to be cleaned 2 to 3 times a year. And chickens will eat pretty much everything except citrus. The amount of waste they produce is small. It takes 6 chickens to produce as much waste as 1 medium-sized dog. Are you still unconvinced? I know probably some of you are afraid of noise, smell, and rodents, but here are some facts that help put your fears aside. Noise. Some neighbors might be worried that chickens are too loud. You don't need to worry about a cock-a-doodle-doo waking you in the morning. Only roosters crow, and my proposal is to only allow chickens in Huntington Woods. In fact, chickens only make noise for 2 reasons: if they are attacked or in danger, and when they are laying an egg. Chickens only lay eggs once a day, and the noise only lasts for just 5 seconds. I bet that's a lot less than your neighbor's dog. And during that 5 seconds, well, the noise level when they lay their eggs runs only about 60 to 70 decibels, which isn't a lot. Dogs bark at 90 decibels and above. Smell. Other neighbors might be worried that they'll be smelly and dirty. When it comes to smell, like any other pet, you need to be a responsible pet owner. Just like you have to pick up your dog's waste from the backyard, as long as you keep your coop maintained, it won't smell, and the coop only needs to be cleaned out about 2 to 3 times a year. You just need to clear the nesting box of waste by throwing the waste on the coop floor, and it will compost itself naturally. Rodents. And others might be worried about attracting rats. When building your coop, use wire mesh, and rodents and other predators can't get in. Store food in metal containers, the same way you do birdseed, and rodents can't get to it. Again, like with your dog and bird feeders, keep waste and food spills cleaned up, and rats will have nothing to come for. Did you know that many surrounding communities allow backyard chickens already, and that Berkeley ran a pilot program for backyard chickens last year and made it permanent this year? Today, chickens are allowed in Auburn Hills, Berkeley, Clawson, Ferndale, Hazel Park, Lathrop Village, Madison Heights, Northville, Rochester Hills, Royal Oak, Southfield, Troy, Warren, and West Bloomfield, just to name a few. But why do chickens belong in Huntington Woods? What will make allowing them great for our community? Chickens produce eggs, which is good for yourself and sharing with neighbors. 2, chickens eat weeds and bugs, which gives you a healthier backyard. 3. Chickens reduce trash and waste. You can feed them kitchen scraps left over from dinner, lunch, or breakfast by reducing the amount of garbage our city sends to landfills. And 4. Chickens provide entertainment and a reason to visit neighbors, getting people outdoors and supporting a more connected community. Still not convinced? Courtney Wooten, the woman who brought backyard chickens to Berkeley, is here today to support me and can also answer many questions you may have about Berkeley's program. She is also offering the commissioners a field trip to her backyard coop in Berkeley so you can see, hear, and smell for yourself. To summarize, chickens are very friendly, they are fun to cuddle with, and easy to maintain. And chickens are not smelly, not noisy, and are not rodent attractors. Please change the law so Huntington Woods, too, can benefit from backyard chickens. Thank you. Do you have any questions I can answer?
Thank you very much. Show's over. Anyone have any questions?
No, and thank you very much for that very well put together presentation. You did an excellent job.
I know the city administration has started putting together some ordinances from the surrounding communities. I do have one question. Are you proposing chickens in kennels or free range, if that's the correct term for it?
I was just thinking in like the backyards and in coops, but not in kennels, like indoors or anything.
Do you want to explain, or do you want to bring up? So we have a couple of guests here, including Courtney Wooten, who's got the coop in Berkeley, and also a council member from Hazel Park, who also brought her chicken.
And also Lauren Mikulski, who is Ferndale Backyard Chickens.
So they could probably answer some questions for you specifically.
What might be nice is to explain the experiences that you've had and how long your program has been operating.
I'll go first. Hi, my name is Courtney Wooten. I am a resident of Berkeley, and I have backyard hens. When first coming to Berkeley Council, we were actually met with chuckles and laughs, and Mayor O'Dwyer saying, "No way." But what I found from my personal journey with backyard hens, my hens started in Lathrop, then moved to Berkeley. We're in a situation where we are asking you to make law based on something that you may or may not have any knowledge of on a first-hand basis. So as Georgia said, I think it's important that each of you take the time to actually visit at least one coop firsthand. Each and every member of Berkeley Council visited at least one local coop, as well as members of the community that were against backyard chickens. What I found was that in each and every case, those that arrived dead set against it, left with knowledge and understanding. They may not have been like ready to run out and get their own chickens, but they left understanding that it was an overall good thing for the community. I know one of your questions was about housing, and I can explain to you kind of what takes place is pretty similar in virtually every city that has chickens approved in the area, and the other ladies that are here can also share with their experience. Typically, chickens sleep in what's called a coop. They go to bed as soon as it's dark. As Georgia said, they don't make a lot of noise unless they're laying an egg or unless they're in fear. So they're pretty quiet animals, pretty docile animals. In most of the areas surrounding us, there are very specific requirements for what's called a run. It's where the chickens are when they're not in their coop sleeping at night. It's common practice to not allow free-range hens. There are predators in the area. So much like a small dog, like a Pomeranian or something like that, you have to use the same protections for your pet, whether it be a small dog like a Pomeranian or Chihuahua. The same goes for chickens. So chickens are kept in a space that allows them plenty of space to be healthy and safe during the day. Chicken owners typically allow their chickens out only in their presence. So they do go out every day, kind of like you let your dog out for a walk. You let your chickens out in the backyard so that they can eat bugs and have some free time. But rather than reinventing the wheel, it's pretty easy to look at what other cities have done as far as requirements for the coop. They are made of 1/4-inch hardware mesh as opposed to chicken wire. They are made with certain sizes. My particular coop has pavers underneath, and Laura can talk quite a bit about rodent control. Just as you have concerns about people that feed wild birds, you need to make sure that people that do have chickens are maintaining their coops properly. My particular coop has a floor of pavers and has an apron about 3 feet all the way around the entire coop. It has a 4-foot by 7-foot footprint. So that allows an apron of hardware mesh so that no rodents can get in. And also the coop is kept in a manner with this hardware mesh on all the sides or wood, so that there's no possibility of gaining access for rodents. I was the one home that was in the pilot program in Berkeley. We now have increased our chicken permits. There are 5 available. I believe 3 are currently active. But during that time, we have had 0 complaints, 0 issues. And I do invite each and every one of you to come to my home, to visit my coop, and to gain some understanding in detail firsthand about what George is talking about, because it is probably a new concept to you. Thank you.
Okay, Courtney, could I have, make sure you leave your name and address and contact information with our clerk, just so we can get a hold of you?
I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm on City Council in Hazel Park, so commissioners here, right? Commissioners? I always say it wrong, I'm sorry. Alyssa Sullivan, Hazel Park City Council member. Mr. Jenks, I just saw you at the conference in Grand Rapids. Nice to see you again. I'm here as both a chicken owner as well as a council member in a city that has a similar yard footprint to yours. We've had legalized chickens in Hazel Park since 1943. We have never had a single complaint, ever. I called and verified that again today because I was like, I just want to make sure before I come and announce that. We have not had a single complaint against coops or chickens in our city since 1943 when they were legalized. We have updated now. You do have to get approval from the city. I think currently we have 15 or 20 homeowners that have 3 chickens, 3 hens each. We do restrict roosters, as Georgia's proposing and as other municipalities do. Roosters are not, they're not necessarily friendly. They're also not really communicable for city living. But a couple things that I'd like to note is I did bring my chicken. Her name is Wren. She is a house hen. She's a rescue. She lost her toes to frostbite. She's from Southwest Detroit, so she's also bilingual. It's not a joke. I actually do dog training as well, and chickens are very easily trained in similar ways that you train dogs with clickers. And she knows commands in both English and Spanish. Her former owners only spoke Spanish, so we work with what we have, right? I can tell you that having a chicken in my home is not much different than having another bird, except she's very nice. I grew up with parrots, got bit many, many times by my mother's parrots. This chicken has never bitten me. She's lovely. She likes to snuggle. She'll sit on my lap and watch a movie. She likes my cats. She likes my dogs. They're actually afraid of her. My big dogs are afraid of my chickens. It's pretty entertaining. They're like, she flies, no thanks. But I would encourage you to really reach out to the other communities and the other community leaders that have had success with this program. I am thoroughly impressed by Georgia and her research and her ability to come up here and really request with information and intelligence, which is wonderful. She's really done her research, and I think she'd be a great chicken owner. And I'd love to see this be a success in your community too. And I will leave my card.
Before you leave your card, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
So in Hazel Park, you have a limit on the number of permits that you grant for folks who want to do this?
We don't have a limit on the number of permits, but we do have a limit on the number of hens, and it's currently 3. Most communities limit to 3 to 6 in this area because the square footage of your property available versus the space available for your chickens, for your coop, you want there to be enough room for your chickens.
What is the charge for the permit, and is it an annual or renewal?
Ours is no charge. You just have to submit for approval. And then you submit your plan, we come out, we approve it, and then we just check in with you.
How do you cover the cost of the enforcement? In other words, I heard Ms. Stoy say how, you know, you have to have the PowerPoint about, you know, how the coops have to be constructed and so forth. Well, say they're not constructed like that. How is that policed, and how do you have code enforcement if there's no reimbursement to the city for that overhead?
Well, because we haven't had any complaints since 1943, we haven't had a need to instill any cost to go along with that.
So that's the difference between Hazel Park and Huntington Woods.
Yeah, we don't. People don't like to tattle unless they're really mad at you in Hazel Park, but they will tattle on you for really silly things as well. So I feel you. Our code enforcement is busy
we're well
here.
acquainted with neighbor versus neighbor.
Yes, we are as well. I do believe that the other communities around us do have a cost associated. Plus, there's also the ability to ticket people through code enforcement, which then would reimburse for the cost. And that's kind of the way we've addressed it, because there hasn't been any backlash from the chickens, so we haven't had any cost really associated with it through the city yet.
Yeah.
But if there was, that would be a consideration.
You say you have, it sounds like, how many total in Hazel Park?
When I called today, I was under the impression there was 12, but I believe we have 15 currently.
15 houses in a community of
Similar size to yours, 2.2 square miles, and you guys are 1.7. So
Right.
yeah, about 17,000
It was-
residents.
So, I guess you always, when the proponent of an idea comes in, they want to talk about the upside. What, as a city council person now,
Yeah.
not as a chicken lover and all this other thing, but how would you objectively describe the downside?
Well, because we haven't had any negative repercussions, I would say currently I don't see any. I literally I reached out to code enforcement today, as well as the city clerk, and literally called the city manager, and I said, you promised me there has not been a single complaint. And he said, none. And I said, since 1943, we have nothing on the records. And he's like, nope, nothing, not a single complaint about any of the registered chickens.
Is the idea that the mesh would keep rats out?
Yeah, so there's a couple great things. So I also I wear a multitude of hats. I also, for a very long time, did outreach in Southwest Detroit. So a lot of the things that we did there were building kennels and dig-proof kennels for outdoor dogs, which is literally the exact same thing that you put in place to prevent rats from getting into chicken coops. So there are a couple ways that you can address this. One of the easiest ways is to dig down and under, or down and out, and you place the wire mesh, which is a thicker, it's not a chicken wire, but it's a thicker metal. It doesn't rust, it's chew-proof, all of those fun things. And you bury that, and then you place brick pavers against it to help keep it in place, but also to kind of create that seal.
It's the equivalent of a rat wall.
It literally is a rat wall. That's literally what it is. Yep.
Yeah, but see, and I understand that there's only 16, and I understand that, but like I said, I'm looking, when you pass something, you don't just have to look at what you say is the positives, and,
Sure.
and it's, where's the downside to it, what, if you were being asked, I was gonna put the young lady on the spot and give her a chance to do it with devil's advocate, but if you were gonna say, okay, now I'm a resident that comes in and says, I don't want to even see these things here, or hear them, or smell them, or anything like that, despite, so how would you present the opponent's argument that no?
Well, since I've met the opponents many times in multitudes of places, I also went and spoke in Clawson, because Clawson is trying to pass an ordinance as well. I would say that as much like people that have dogs and have noisy neighbor dogs, a lot of things can be addressed through code. You can write into your ordinance all of the restrictions that you prefer. You can look at the successes that other cities have had, so you can, and their failures as well, so you can minimize those failures and do yours as a pilot program like they did in Berkeley. They ran it for a year. How successful was it? How much failure do we have? Can we tweak? Can we adjust? Do we need to? And I think that's I think there's so many great examples locally of ways to prevent that kind of negative backlash and fallout.
Are there any kind of standards, uniform standards, promulgated by any type of an authority on what type of coop is desirable, or?
To my knowledge, no. Laura, is that a?
Do you want me to step up?
So Laura is much more knowledgeable on the kind of
Something
statewide.
like the American Chicken Coop
Of somewhat, yeah,
Society or something like that.
What you're looking for is the generally accepted agricultural management practices put out by MSU. And if you look at Ferndale's ordinance, Ferndale includes all of that verbiage and cites that as part of the reason that they have standards for those coops. And to your point with negatives, I'm going to give you all the negatives because
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No,
here.
and I love that you are, because there are things that you might not expect, because it took me 4 years to get chickens in Ferndale. I started out in 2008 before it was a hot topic within cities, and we got chickens in 2012. It was allowed. I petitioned for it again for 4 years and heard every complaint and all the things that had been addressed thus far, smell, noise, rats, all of those. I've spoken to all of those. And just now in 2018, we've actually increased the number of chickens that we can have from 3 to 6 in Ferndale because it's been so successful and has been such a non-issue. However, the negatives. So hens don't crow unless they've hit henopause, which is just, it's a funny way of saying they're no longer kicking out those eggs as much. Their bodies are changing. They've gone through a lot in life. My hens are 6 years old, or at least 2 of them are. 2 or 6, 1 is going through henopause. She has hit that spot where she's no longer laying eggs. And in the morning, she greets the sun with kind of a falsetto cock-a-doodle-doo. And that is 6 years in, and it's very embarrassing, it's very quiet, and it lasts maybe a minute. But it's something to be aware of. Additionally, my hens are spoiled because they've had 6 years in my yard. I let them out to roam around on the grass from time to time. I've actually set about half of my yard as a space for them to go out and do their thing and be chickens and be happy. If I don't go out early enough, they grumble. Literally, they will grumble out there, and you'll hear that sort of noise just grumbling in the backyard. It has not become an issue with my neighbors, and you know in Ferndale, our homes are in very close proximity. My neighbors don't hear it, or if they do, they don't mind. And I speak to all of my neighbors within that range. So those are 2 issues that are, they're a potential, they're a reality. In addition, if you don't put a municipal code in place that states that you need to have a stationary coop or a coop that is fully enclosed with 1/2-inch hardware cloth, that is the minimum size that you can use, 1/2-inch hardware cloth to enclose the entire thing, which includes the coop and the run, so that there's no points of entry. If you don't do that, you will get rats, period. Rats love chicken feed. Chicken feed is fragrant, especially if you use any sort of chicken scratch that has corn in it. So with those things in mind, if you do those 2 things and you pay attention to the generally accepted agricultural management practices, look for the GAMPs online. If you look for that then you can write your code accordingly so that you won't have an issue. But if you don't write a code and you have people that are out there with chickens, they're gonna do it the wrong way. They can do it the cheap way.
Does Ferndale have a permit fee?
Yes, we do.
How
It's
much?
$35 and it is an annual renewal, and we renew every year in January. Again, Ferndale, there have been 0 complaints for people who legally have chickens. Now, there are about 21 or 22 people that legally have chickens in Ferndale. That number is increasing. So it's something that we know is out there. We know that these people are on the books, they have their chickens, and they get inspected every single year in January. I don't love the fact that it's inspected in January because there's snow on the ground, and I'd prefer that our code enforcement would be able to walk the perimeter of the coop to ensure that there is no point of entry to have these rats get in. I would prefer that. We're looking to change that in the near future.
What is the cost of one of these coops?
Mine was astronomical because I built it myself, and it's a beautiful coop. It's been featured on the covers of magazines, but it probably cost about $1,000. So, and that's an investment that I wanted to make because I wanted to do it right, not easy, right, so that it was sturdy. It was essentially bomb-proof. It's predator-proof, it's rat-proof, and it's very comfortable for the hens, and it's comfortable for me as a person who's going to go in there and clean that coop on a daily basis, because I don't want bugs, I don't want rodents, and I don't want any sort of noxious fumes accumulating inside the coop because it can hurt the chickens, it can affect their respiration. So with all of that said, I went above and beyond because I'm paranoid, just a paranoid person. That's what I do. It's how I thrive. That said,
Living in Ferndale can do that. No, I'm just kidding.
it's true, and I came from Warren, so
Whoa.
I've got a double whammy there. But I've worked with Ferndale, I've worked with East Point, I've worked with Warren on some of their code enforcement issues. So I have seen all of these people put into place smart municipal code that allows for this to their benefit. Because once you have that code on the books, you have a way to make sure that people abide by it, you inspect it, you give them that conduit so that they do it right. And if you do that, it's usually a non-issue. Again, I have seen, and I've spoken to code enforcement in pretty much all of these cities that were listed earlier, as well as some more. And nobody has an issue with permitted chickens who are abiding by their code.
You have, in the contemporary words of our society, illegals in terms of chickens?
Absolutely. Yep, there's absolutely illegal chickens within pretty much every city. I wouldn't be shocked if you had them here and you just don't know it. As she said, she has a chicken down below. They're very quiet. As long as they're not laying an egg, as long as they're not having a henopause moment, as long as there's no predator around, they're pretty quiet. They don't smell. You can't smell them up there. So most of the time, they're just ambling around in the backyard, picking at grass, eating bugs, eating their chicken feed. And then every once in a while, they go and lay an egg, and they squawk about it. I would too, if I was a chicken.
Could you
Thank you.
give us
Very-
your name again for the record?
Sure, my name is Laura Mikulski,
Lauren?
and I am from Ferndale.
And if you wouldn't mind giving our clerk your contact information, you seem to have a lot of information that might
I do
come
have
in
a lot of
handy.
information.
Yes.
If you are interested in learning more and seeing all of the various codes that are out there in southeastern Michigan, so I'm not touching on northern Michigan or western Michigan, I've compiled all of them to the best of my abilities on the Ferndale Chickens website, and there's a link on the front page that says cities that allow chickens in Michigan.
Let me ask you a question about
Yes.
that, because that's a good point that you make. A lot of times when we look at ordinances, we look at similar contiguous cities. Cities like Grosse Pointe, Birmingham, things like that. Is Birmingham allowed?
Birmingham does not,
Has there been a similar movement there?
not to my knowledge,
Okay,
and I'm usually the first person to hear, so,
all right, and how about the Grosse Pointes?
no, none there as well.
And I only ask that because, like I said, you tend to look at contiguous
Higher end
Beverly
communities,
Hills,
right.
things like that, densely, some variation lot homes, things like that, older trees, all of that.
Sure.
Just trying to see what they do cause it's not fair to go to like a Rochester Hills, which is new and everything's underground and everything.
Right.
It's a totally different landscape, literally and figuratively. All right, well, thank you. You've been very
Absolutely.
informative. I appreciate
Excuse
it.
me, how long has the Ann Arbor ordinance been in place?
I want to say that was at least 3 years prior to Ferndale's ordinance. It could have been further though, because it was one of the ordinances that we looked at as we were crafting the Ferndale ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question of the council person from Hazel Park. Are you aware, just curious, are you aware of any instances where this perhaps has affected a resale of a home where somebody, went and said, geez, they go in the backyard and they see the neighbor has chickens in their yard and they say, geez, I thought I was buying a house in Huntington Woods and not Romeo, I'm not interested in, because they're unaware of, the facts behind it. Right, so are you aware of that being a disincentive to home sales in your community?
It's kind of ironic that you asked that as well, because I was just at a meeting the other day. We had a first responders dinner, and some of our large real estate, one of the biggest real estate people in Hazel Park sponsored it. And I spoke with him and a couple of his associates, and we got on the topic of chickens, because I said, hey, I'm going to a thing about chickens. And I said, have you ever heard of any issues? And he said, no, actually, a lot of the people coming in are citing the fact that they can have chickens in Hazel Park. The kind of new community that we're building in Hazel Park is a little bit different than the old Hazel Park. So we're moving towards more of people that are really about greener living and responsible eating and responsible living and being a bit more back to nature, back to earth, which is great. I'm super proud of that. We have I'm also on the Arts Council, and we're really pushing our arts initiative in Hazel Park, which is great. And I think that's attracting a lot of the newer homeowners as well. And back to address your issue your question rather about the cost. In Hazel Park, we're trying not to over-ordinance things that aren't a problem right now. We have more of an issue with community cats and outdoor cats. So I'm actually, I've started my own nonprofit, and I'm working on an initiative to do an ordinance specifically to address cats, outdoor cats, community cats, and to work on a TNR ordinance for that as well. And then we just brought Laura in for rat
You told me
issues.
you don't want to have too many ordinances.
I know, but we're having a problem with that. So that's why we're working on things that we don't have. I mean, we have an ordinance on the books. We updated it in '99. We haven't really had any issue with it. So we're kind of, things that we're not seeing issues, we're kind of moving towards things that are being more brought up in the public as
I
complaint.
have another, and
Yeah.
I'm doing this because this is our
Gladly.
first opportunity to explore this.
Sure.
And I want to be sure that it gets a fair hearing.
Mm-hmm.
What about, I heard all the business about health issues, but I want to ask a more specific question. What about infectious disease?
So my chicken lives in my house.
I know, but I'm asking you, is there, do you know
communicable
of-
diseases?
Is there a concern about chickens carrying, or, I'm only asking,
Sure.
I don't know. All I know about chicken is I like it.
You might like her too. She's lovely.
I don't think I'd be the guy to own a chicken and name it Chicken Shack, but that's.
okay. That's all right.
What I'm asking is, are you aware of infectious disease concerns about diseases or bacteria, or
Sure.
call it whatever you want, that may be born by chickens that are perhaps not born by other pets and things like that? Just a question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a valid question. So chickens are not vaccinated like other pets.
Yep.
So they don't carry the same diseases as mammals and things like that, dogs, cats.
Are they vaccinated at all?
They're not. Are yours vaccinated?
They can be.
They can be. I'm like, mine are not currently. But the bigger concerns that you have to deal with are going to be the not cleaning of the coop, which would cause normal parasites that happen outside from leftover feces. If somebody didn't clean up after their dog as well, similar things to those nature.
Might as well call it a rat restaurant.
Of sorts, except if your coop is good, you're gonna get more
No,
bugs
I
than
mean either
rodents.
way, all right.
Yeah, if your coop is intact, then you're not gonna get the rodent issue, you're gonna get bugs, flies, and things of that nature. Laura, do you have more to talk about on diseases? Because I wanna give them the accurate information.
On the topic of diseases, most people are usually concerned about salmonella. That's what the CDC comes out with on a yearly basis, except for this year. And I don't want to take credit for that, but I'm going to take credit for that. So the CDC typically comes out around March and or up to June with their numbers on reported salmonella cases connected to touching live chickens. And they label it as touching live chickens that are backyard chickens, because the information that they can put out about it, number one, backyard chickens we know is a hot topic, so they get people to engage with that information. Number two, most of the time that people are getting infected with salmonella is from baby chicks. And they love to put out the information that says, don't kiss your chickens. If you do a Google search for don't kiss your chickens, you'll see the CDC saying over and over again, don't kiss them, don't cuddle them. However, the real issue with salmonella and chickens is poo. If you touch poo and you put it on your mouth, you get salmonella. There's a risk there. So common sense practices like washing your hands, not touching poo and touching your mouth, it's very simple and it's very easy to do. With children, small children, they should not lick their pets or lick anything that the pets have walked on. And I say these things because those are things that can happen. So it is not a public health concern in the way that you would think of an infectious disease causing an epidemic.
Well, salmonella, though, I mean, that is
It is a
very
horrendous thing.
dangerous.
Right. Now, you can get salmonella from touching something that a rat walked across. You can get salmonella from undercooked food. And yet, most of us aren't too concerned about it on a daily basis.
Has there ever been a study done about chickens involving
Absolutely.
home or backyard and salmonella?
I would refer you back to the CDC's website.
Is
That's an ongoing thing that they report on, and they report every single case that they find. This year, they did not put it out in the public the way that they have in years prior, primarily because I myself have reached out to the CDC and spoken to them and looked at their numbers because they keep calling it an epidemic. An epidemic, by their definition, is 2 cases, 2 people that are infected, which is a little bit low. And the vast majority of the cases that they're reporting on are baby chicks from a single hatchery within the Midwest. Those birds are infected from birth. They don't just pick it up. So the likelihood of it being an issue for the vast majority of people, slim to none.
Have, in terms of like a university like Michigan State that has a very large veterinary medicine, are there any guidelines or recommendations promulgated by universities or by veterinary medicine associations regarding this?
Absolutely.
That you're aware of?
Yep, the real recommendations are wash your hands. Don't walk in the house with shoes that you used in your chicken coop. And
What do you do when you're in your yard? If you say you let the chickens out and you let them out in the yard and everything like that, what do you do if there's waste in the grass and stuff like that?
well, I personally do not, I'm not that worried about it myself. I don't wear my shoes in the house. I take them off at the back door, and I don't put my mouth on the grass, nor do I put my bare feet on the grass. So for the vast majority of the time, I'm not at risk. Now, when I clean...
You engage in those precautions out of concern for...
I also have 2 dogs, and the dog waste probably scares me more. And I have raccoons that walk through my backyard, and the raccoons scare me most of all.
They're not yours, though.
They're not my
they're just-
raccoons.
don't tell me they're
Believe
there
it
to
or
visit
not,
the
they're not my
chickens.
raccoons. And in fact, I'm terrified of raccoons. Absolutely terrified of them because they can also have leptospirosis in their urine, and they have cryptosporidia within their feces. So I'm absolutely horrified by them. I do not like raccoons. They scare the Jesus out of
If
me.
you don't mind, if you would be kind enough to email either myself or our city manager, some of the references you described, the
Sure.
Center for Disease Control and so forth, that is far more of interest to me in terms of hardcore data and empirical information.
Sure.
I get all of this, and I understand the emotional component of it and everything like that, but when you're sitting here, you have to balance everything. It isn't just say, these are really nice people, a really smart young lady that came in, a great PowerPoint and stuff like that, great. And then I wanna hear from somebody that says, you what? So I wanna be able,
I'm
whatever
nothing
we
if
do,
negative.
and I appreciate the education. I really learned a lot here tonight, and I appreciate that, but I'd like you to share some of that hardcore information with us so that if we do approach this, we approach it based on evidence, not just on good feeling and things, you know.
I don't know if you can tell from the way that I look, but I'm not the feel-good person in the crowd.
You're not the what?
I'm not the feel-good person in the crowd. I am the data person.
That's what I'm looking
Sure.
for.
And-
I always say that, I'd much rather see, a peer-reviewed, journal article or something that's, like based on scientific data, because that way you can make a more informed decision.
Sure.
So I appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor,
One last-
Mr. Mayor, why don't we just refer this to city administration, have them pursue it further? A couple things I'd like to see is looking at
This is what you call being cut off.
similar size communities.
I know how you feel, James.
You're giving Jenks a run for his money today. Birmingham, Bloomfield, Beverly Hills, the Grosse Points, look at similar communities to us. What do they allow? Also, would you please check with some of our real estate professionals in the community, see if they have any concerns or they've heard of anything that's, of issue that they may want to share with us? Thanks.
And just so you understand the process, I'm not sure what everyone thinks it's in the audience, but this, more than likely, once we receive a lot of this information back from administration, is something that the city council will ask the planning commission to look at the official writing of the ordinance, and a public hearing will be held, so we get a lot of different input on it, if there is input from the public out there before we take action. And this isn't a public hearing, but I see a gentleman that looks like he really wants to say something. Is that the case, or am I misreading your body language right there on the end?
Me?
Yep. You look like you wanted to get up, that's why.
I'm very interested in this. I'm very impressed by the presentation that Georgia gave. And
I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to add. If you did, you're more than welcome to come up.
well,
and
I'm a
let us-
nearby neighbor.
Could you come forward to the microphone so everyone can hear and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a neighbor, just a couple of houses north and west of Georgia's home. And she gave her presentation to me in my home yesterday. A couple of days ago. I was most impressed by it. I was even more impressed when I heard what she presented to you tonight. I welcome backyard chickens, and I'm going to be close.
And your name, sir?
Talbert Stein.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Evan Gabries, and I am a big part of 4-H. I am a big part of 4-H. I am at the farm 3 times a week, and my favorite animals are chickens, and I think it would be great to have them here in Huntington Woods. I play with chickens whenever I'm at the farm, and I have never gotten sick from them. And no one in my club has gotten sick from them. I have a lot of experience with chickens, and I just think it would be great to have them in Huntington Woods.
Thank you very much. Okay. We're all set? Commissioner Jenks?
Yeah, I would hope that from the various cities, we could get the number of chicken complaints, but also if you can check on the number of other animal complaints, dogs, cats. I suspect that the number of chicken complaints is substantially lower.
Bob, Mayor, I lived with chickens for 2.5 years while serving in the Peace Corps in Honduras. I'm a Huntington Woods resident, and if anyone on the commission wants to ask me about what it's like to live within 3 feet of a chicken, or many chickens, or as in my case, many thousands of chickens, I'm happy to talk to you guys about it at any time. Backyard bourbon, anytime. Just
Dan, you want to give him your name?
yeah, Daniel Brooks. I'm also on the EAC, the Environmental Commission. So, turning my card to clerk. All right.
Thank you.
I just wanted to respond a little bit further to a couple of the financial questions that you had. I have the benefit of having chickens in 2 area cities that handle the permits very differently. And I know that the financial aspect of it is absolutely something important to consider. Lathrop Village has an annual permit. It's $65. They also do an inspection. Berkeley has an $80 permit. One of the things that Laura mentioned is the inspection time period, which I think is something critical to think about because winter is not the best time to do that. Berkeley does it twice a year, actually. Permits are renewed in March, and there are inspections twice a year. And then I also wanted to just touch on the home sales. I am in the position, I'm probably the only person in the area that has actually sold a home and moved chickens to another local community with chickens. I sold my Lathrop Village home last October. I had 5 offers on that house. 3 people wanted my chickens. I had to work hard to say, no, you can't have my chickens. And then they said, can I have your coop? I said no. So that is just one situation, but in my personal experience, something that I thought would be valuable to add. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I'm going to take one more comment from the back there.
So, yeah, like maybe some people, like youth, could learn from chickens because I learned a lot of life lessons at home. And it could teach us more about farming and things like that. So we could learn more about chickens in farming.
Thank you. Could you tell us your name for the record, too?
Willem Allen.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Moving on, we have yet one more presentation this evening from Eli, from Eli Wine Company. This is a presentation regarding a proposed business plan on 11 Mile Road at the old Sam's Market.
What wine goes good with chicken?
We have to wait for everyone to leave. That's another thing to contemplate. Boy, after listening to Georgia and her eloquent and convincing argument, I'm afraid I'm not even as close to her presentation or the way that I'm going to talk about my subject. So, Mr. Mayor,
Hold on, Eli. We gotta get it.
I had suggested that Eli make a presentation to the city commission if he is able to execute a contract with the